a leader and football coach, you will probably come into contact with children who have experienced difficult situations. They might have been mistreated, bullied, or might have been victims of violence or abuse, or children have been hurt in any other way. Children are vulnerable since they depend on adults. And it is also during our childhood that we develop the core of our self-esteem. And if we then during our childhood do not get our needs met, this might have a negative impact on our development. If children experience violence, abuse, or mistreatment, they might live with consequences of these experiences throughout their lives. We therefore need to do everything we can to support children and give them a safe space to develop. And make sure that even if children do experience bad things, that they then get support to process these experiences in order for them not to define them later in life. When we say mistreated, it can mean a lot of things. It can relate to different types of violence, such as physical, psychological, verbal, or sexual violence. It can also be severe lack of care, or that a child is used for someone else's gain, like being forced to work or being used or sold for sexual services. Lack of care means that a child doesn't get their basic needs satisfied in their home, such as not getting enough food to eat, or that they never get love or attention from the people that take care of them. A child can be mistreated at home, in school, or online, by adults as well as by peers. Unfortunately, also within football, there are people that try to take advantage of children. You can feel worried for a child being mistreated because you have seen or heard something that makes you think that the child is being hurt in some way. It can be physical signs of violence, or perhaps that a child changes behavior compared to what you're used to. And as a leader in Football da Força, we want you to act if you are worried about a child. We consider it our responsibility as adults to make sure that all children are allowed to grow up safe. And therefore, it is part of our policy that you as leaders will act when you feel worried about a child being mistreated or faring badly in any way. We want you to report this to the social services or any other similar authority in the area where you live, so that the child can get professional support and help if necessary. To report that you suspect mistreatment, you don't need any proof. You are basically reporting your worry and concern about the child. Proceeding to find out if the child is actually mistreated is the social services responsibility. They are the experts in investigating children's situations and seeing if a child is actually mistreated. Remember that children who are mistreated need professional help, and therefore it is much better for the child that you leave that for those who work professionally with these issues. Remember that you are a football coach. You are not a psychologist, social worker, or police officer. But as football coaches, we can still do a lot to support children in vulnerable situations. You can still be a very important support for the child, regardless if something requires a report to social services or if the child is simply going through a tough time. All people experience things that are tough to go through, and there are many things that can happen to your players that don't require any form of reporting, but that might still affect them negatively. And irrespective of if you have children in your team that experience situations that need to be reported to authorities, or if it's something that doesn't need reporting but is still a tough situation for the child, they need to feel heard and seen and have an extra shoulder to lean on and someone to talk to. When you have players that go through tough situations and need support, we recommend that you use a very simple and incredibly powerful model called the 3B model. The first step in this model is the first B, be near, which means to be close and to show that you are there for your player. Be near physically and let your player know that you are there to support them. Of course, everyone has the right to decide over their own body and have their personal boundaries respected. So when being close, we of course have to respect everyone's personal boundaries. They decide themselves whether you can hug or touch them or not. But even if a person doesn't want a hug, you can show them that you are there anyway, by maybe sitting next to them and saying, "I'm here for you." Make time to show your player your presence, both physically and emotionally. The second step is be quiet. Many times when we want to support someone, our immediate reaction is often that we want to say that everything will be okay, and we start to talk about potential solutions to the problem, simply because we really want to solve the problem so that our players can be okay. But that's something you cannot promise a child. And when immediately trying to solve a problem, we risk not seeing and listening to the child. To be able to process something that we're going through, we have to be able to find words for it and express it. And that is much easier to do if we have someone who listens to us. And you can be that person for your players, simply by being quiet and listening. Listening is the most important thing we can do. And always listen until the person has finished talking, and then listen a little bit more. Don't give advice. Don't tell them about when you have been in a similar situation. Just listen and be quiet. This is what most people unfortunately don't make time for. Even though we know that to process a negative experience, we need to express our feelings. And to do that, we need to understand our feelings and express them. And by just simply listening, you can give your player the possibility to process their experience. This will not make bad things go away, but it will help your player process what they have gone through, which will make it easier for them to cope with it. The last step is be there, which means that you should stay, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, until you are no longer needed. When a difficult situation arises, or when your player first tells you about it, stay there and be present. Listen until they are ready to be on their own or move on. And after this, continue to show them that you are there, that you are dedicated and available, both emotionally and mentally, until it's no longer needed. It is not up to you to decide when the person doesn't need your support anymore. It is up to them. If you are not there for them the whole way, you risk letting the person down and making them feel more vulnerable, since they have built up a trust in you. So be careful when you tell a player that you want to be there for them if they need you. You should only do this if you actually can be there. And if you can't, that is totally okay. But then you also need to let your player know that. If that is the case, you can use the trust your player has in you to direct your player to someone else that can support them. When doing so, it is important that you use the trust that the player has for you and hand that over to the new person. If the player doesn't trust the new support person, they won't be able to accept their help, and that can do more harm than good. Make sure that the person you hand over to is a person that you trust and someone that the player feels safe with. And share the 3B model with them to give them better resources to continue giving good support. If you have experienced a similar situation as the one your player needs support with, it is important that you feel safe and can listen to a similar story without it triggering your own difficult memories and emotions. So if you haven't fully processed your own experience, it is better that you then hand over the case to someone else immediately. So, to summarize, if you are worried that a player is being severely mistreated, report this to the social services. And if you think that a player is going through something difficult and just needs someone to talk to, use the 3B model or help them get in touch with someone who can support them. And do this even if it's something that you report to authorities. Remember that the player still needs someone that listens to them and someone that is there for them. And also remember that in order to support your players, you also need support. Within the Football La Forza Leaders Network, there is always someone that is available to help you. Reach out to us and we will make sure you get the support you need. And remember that we also need to take care of ourselves in order to take care of others. As I said, a football coach and leader is not a psychologist, social worker, or police officer. We should do what we do best and let other people do what they do best, so that we together can make sure that all children get the support they need. By being present and listening to our players, we can provide an incredibly important support. So you can, as a leader, make a great difference simply by being near, being quiet and listening, and being there for your players.